There comes a moment when you realize you are no longer trying to be understood. Not because people finally understood you, but because something inside you grew too tired to keep asking. For a long time, every misunderstanding felt unfinished. If someone saw you differently than you saw yourself, you searched for better words. You explained your intentions. You clarified what you meant. You replayed conversations long after they ended, convinced that somewhere inside them there had to be one sentence capable of changing everything. One sentence that would finally make another person say, "Now I understand." You weren't trying to win. You were trying to be seen. There's a quiet difference between those two things. Wanting to be right often hides something much softer. The hope that if someone truly understands your heart, maybe they won't leave. Maybe they won't think the worst of you. Maybe they'll stop carrying a version of you that never felt true. So you keep explaining, not because the story changes, but because you hope their picture of you will. Sometimes you explain once, sometimes 20 times, sometimes only inside your own mind. You imagine conversations that never happen. You write responses you never send. You rehearse calm words while lying awake at night, not because you enjoy reliving the moment, but because part of you still believes that understanding can be earned if you explain yourself well enough. It becomes exhausting in ways that are difficult to notice. You begin measuring your peace by someone else's opinion. You wait for relief that depends entirely on another person's ability or willingness to see what you meant. And that relief rarely arrives, because people do not only hear your words, they hear them through their own fears, their own disappointments, their own history. Sometimes they have already decided who you are before the conversation even begins. No explanation can enter a room that has already been closed. That realization hurts. Not because you lose the argument, but because you slowly understand that not every misunderstanding has a bridge waiting to be built. Some remain exactly where they are. You can stand beside them for years, adding more words, more details, more honesty, more patience, and still, nothing moves. Not because your truth isn't real, but because truth and agreement have never been the same thing. For a long time, you believed peace would come after being understood. You imagined that if someone finally saw your intentions correctly, something inside you would finally become quiet. Instead, you discovered something unexpected. The quieter you became, the less you needed anyone to confirm who you were. That change did not happen overnight. It happened in very small moments. A conversation ended. You didn't send one more message. Someone misunderstood your silence. You let them keep their conclusion. Someone repeated a story about you that wasn't entirely true. You felt the familiar urge to correct every detail. And then, for the first time, you didn't. Not because it didn't matter, but because you noticed what chasing understanding had been costing you. It was costing you your evenings, your sleep, your attention, your ability to be fully present in your own life. You weren't only carrying conversations. You were carrying versions of yourself that existed inside other people's minds, trying to organize them, repair them, improve them, as if every misunderstanding had become your responsibility. But how many different versions of yourself exist in the world? One for every person you've ever met. One for every conversation. One for every memory someone keeps. You cannot live inside all of them. You cannot correct every story. You cannot explain yourself into everyone's understanding. At some point, you simply become too divided. A different version of you lives inside every person's memory. Some remember your kindness. Others remember your silence. Some remember the day you stayed. Others only remember the day you left. None of those versions fully belong to you anymore. They belong to memory. And memory has always rewritten things in its own language. There is something unexpectedly peaceful about accepting that. Not because being misunderstood stops hurting. It doesn't. There will always be moments when you wish someone had seen your heart more clearly. Moments when you wish one conversation had ended differently. Moments when another explanation still seems tempting. But eventually, another question becomes more important. How much of your life are you willing to spend asking for permission to be understood? That question changes everything. Because suddenly the conversation is no longer about them. It becomes about you. About the energy you continue giving to doors that have already closed. About mornings that begin with yesterday's conversation. About evenings spent rehearsing words no one will ever hear. Slowly, you begin noticing something different. The conversations that deserve your heart rarely ask you to defend it. The people who truly want to understand you usually don't require endless explanations. They ask, they listen, they remain curious. Understanding grows naturally where curiosity still exists. It cannot be forced where it doesn't. And perhaps that is one of the quietest realizations of all. Not every relationship ends because love disappeared. Sometimes it ends because one person kept explaining while the other stopped listening. You don't always recognize the moment that changes you. Sometimes it looks almost ordinary. You close your phone. You take a walk. You make yourself a cup of tea instead of rewriting another message. The conversation stays exactly where it ended. For the first time, your evening belongs to you instead of the argument. Nothing dramatic happens, no music, no final goodbye, no perfect closure. Just a little more quiet than yesterday, and somehow that quiet feels enough. Perhaps peace was never waiting at the end of the perfect explanation. Perhaps it was waiting at the moment you stopped believing that your worth depended on being understood by everyone. Some people will never see you clearly. Some conversations will never become complete. Some stories about you will continue without your voice. And maybe they always would have. You are allowed to leave some misunderstandings exactly where they are. You are allowed to let some conversations remain unfinished. You are allowed to choose a quieter life over a louder defense. Not because your truth became smaller, but because your peace finally became bigger.